This is David Trent Todeschini coming to you from the beautiful hills of southern North Carolina, bringing you the facts behind the news and the story that contradicts the mainstream media lies, hoping to convince you that the apparency of reality is in fact entirely fabricated and the illusion only appears to be true. But in the battle for the survival of the American Republic and Western civilization, we must expose these illusions in order to bring about and nurture a greater awakening that will preserve our God-given rights and freedoms, not only for ourselves, but for our progeny and for all the future generations of human souls on this planet. We not only must plant the trees whose shade we will never live long enough to enjoy, but first we must uproot the poisonous trees we have for so long been deceived into sitting under. We are dedicated to educate and inform and stand in the gap for all of those innocents who cannot fight for themselves. We have put on the armor of God and stand ready with the weapons of truth to put down the lies of tyranny wherever we find them. We are the watchmen of liberty. We don't forgive, we don't forget, we are invincible, we are American patriots. To this end, and with this firm resolve, my close associates and I have sworn the oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States and all Americans who share our values and wish to live free. Welcome to the most deleted, shadow banned, demonetized, censored, and trolled channel on social media. Recipient of the Patriot Warrior Purple Q Award. The decades-old scam of the petrodollar has come to an end. The U.S. fiat paper currency, which has been worthless since its inception, is finally coming to terms, albeit slowly, with its true value, less than nothing. The only true currency, which has been the world's money for over 5,000 years, has finally shed the shackles of the paper traders who have suppressed it for generations. Since 1971, when Tricky Dick Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard, and 1974, when Kissinger conspired with the Saudis to invent the petrodollar, our coinage slowly over many years changed from 90% silver content to neon steel brass pewter solder, a worthless pile of monopoly money. The advent of ATMs and credit cards were instrumental in keeping people from noticing the changes. My previous 6 videos have covered this subject in the place of my usual political commentary, because what should matter to my viewers more than the capital shit show is their ability to survive the looming financial clusterfuck peeking its ugly head over the horizon. The dollar will go the route of the German mark or Venezuelan bolivar. Don't anyone say you didn't warn me. And just as I'm editing this introduction, my news video feed revealed that Canada has discovered enough helium-3 to power the entire planet for millennia. Another nail in the coffin for the petroleum used for transportation. In 20 years, the only things oil would be good for is lubrication and maybe for rubbing it on your ass. Link for that story is in the description. Okay, let me show you what we're looking at here. This is a chart of silver prices going back to December of 2019. And you can see for many years here, the average is around from $20 to $30. All of a sudden, recently, we took a huge uptick, and it has never, in this whole range, at this scale, shown a red candle. Okay, at this range. Okay, let me get back to the thing that we were at. If you look at it just recently, we are at around $95.60 average for the last few hours as it's opened up today. Today is January 20th. So we've been hovering up and down, up and down. And this is the COMEX price. This is the fake price. Okay, this is what the traders are trading their paper for. Now let's look at this and let's see what the price is in Australia. In Australia, $141, $142. So New York is blowing smoke up your ass, people. There's no way this is the truth. There's no way this is the truth. This is fiction. And this will eventually have to come up to par with what people are actually paying for the metal. That's all I got. Thank you very much for listening.
It is 3 in the morning. I should be sleeping. At 70 years old, sleep is mercy. But I cannot sleep. On my desk are documents that arrived yesterday from a contact I have not heard from in 9 years. His name does not matter. He is dead. But what is in this folder is still screaming. I have not slept since yesterday morning. Once you see what is in here, you cannot look away. My hands are not shaking. After 5 decades in this business, you stop shaking. You just get cold inside. The kind of cold that does not go away when you drink coffee. Let me tell you who I am. I did not spend my career on television. I spent it in the rooms where the decisions are made. Think tanks, central banks, intelligence briefings. I was there in 1973 when the Arab oil embargo hit. I could smell the fear in the New York trading pits. I read the original drafts of the agreement that was supposed to save the dollar. I have spoken to people who were in those rooms. I have forgotten more about how the global financial system works than most economists will ever know. And I am telling you right now, the mainstream media is lying to you about Venezuela. Not because they are evil, but because they do not understand what they are looking at. They see a failed socialist state. They see a humanitarian disaster. All of that is true, but they are missing the actual story. Venezuela was not a failure of American foreign policy. Venezuela was a weapon, and it was pointed directly at the heart of everything that kept America powerful for the last 50 years. Let me be clear about something. I am not a financial advisor. I am just an old man looking at the data that others refuse to see. Everything I am about to tell you is based on historical records and declassified documents. Do your own research. Verify it. Question it. Do not take my word for anything, but listen carefully, because what I am about to explain will not be shown to you on mainstream news networks. The financial media will not touch this analysis. I want to ask you something right now. If you believe this truth needs to reach more people and deserves to be heard, leave a like on this video. The algorithm is designed to bury stories like this. If you like it, you tell the algorithm that truth matters. So please do that now. Now let me take you back to 1974. I need to paint a picture of a world that you may not remember. I need to describe what 1974 looked like to understand the future. After World War II, the American dollar became the world's currency. Not by accident, by design. Britain was exhausted. The United States had the gold. We had the factories. we had the weapons. And when the Bretton Woods system collapsed in 1971, when President Nixon closed the gold window, the entire financial world held its breath. What made the dollar valuable if it was not backed by gold? For about 2 years, there was genuine fear, real fear, the kind that keeps bankers awake at night. The dollar was diving in value. Inflation was accelerating. People were beginning to wonder if the American experiment was finished. And then, in early 1974, something happened. A meeting took place between Henry Kissinger and the King of Saudi Arabia. I have read the original briefing documents. I have spoken to people connected to that meeting, and I can tell you exactly what was discussed. The arrangement was elegant. The United States would guarantee the military security of Saudi Arabia in exchange for one thing. Saudi Arabia would price all of their oil exclusively in dollars. Only dollars. No other currency. Because Saudi Arabia was the largest oil producer in the world, everyone else would have to follow. This was genius. Oil is not optional. Every car runs on it. Every factory uses it. You cannot run a modern economy without oil. And if you need dollars to buy oil, then you need to hold dollars. You need to buy American debt to get those dollars. You need to lend money to the United States. This agreement, which became known as the Petrodollar Agreement, was the most important financial arrangement of the second half of the 20th century. I remember sitting in a bank office in New York in 1976, talking to a Saudi banker who was carefully explaining it to me. He was smoking a cigarette. He had the kind of satisfied expression that comes from understanding power. He said, "Do you understand what we have created?" I said no. He said, "We have made the dollar permanent. We have made it so that America can never lose its reserve currency status as long as oil is the fuel of the world." For 50 years, this agreement held perfectly and completely. The United States could run deficits that should have destroyed the currency. We could print trillions of dollars without any consequence. We could fight wars we could not afford financially. We could build a permanent military presence in over 100 countries across the entire world. We could allow corporations to ship manufacturing overseas. We could let the middle class erode while the wealthy accumulated unimaginable fortunes. We could do all of this because the petrodollar gave us a special privilege. The privilege of exporting our inflation to every other nation on earth. The privilege of borrowing infinite amounts of money. This is what kept America alive. This is what kept us powerful. This is what allowed us to maintain global dominance even as our actual industrial capacity declined. The petrodollar was the foundation of American power itself. But while the world watched the Cold War, while the United States was focused on Russia and China's rise, something was happening in South America that would eventually destroy everything that Kissinger built in 1974. I am talking about Venezuela. In the year 2000, the Chinese government made a decision. I did not know it at the time. Nobody in Washington knew it. But looking back now, reading the documents on my desk, I can see exactly what they were thinking. The Chinese realized something crucial. The petrodollar was not a strength of the American system. It was a critical vulnerability, the kind of vulnerability that empires are destroyed by. Think about that. Every financial system has vulnerabilities. The dollar depended entirely on the willingness of oil-producing nations to price their oil exclusively in dollars. That was the keystone. If that keystone moved, the entire arch collapsed. So the Chinese did something brilliant and terrible. They found a weak state with massive oil reserves. A state being mismanaged. A state where corruption was endemic and leadership incompetent. A state where people were desperate and infrastructure failing. They would find that state and use it as a testing ground. They would show the world that oil could be traded outside the dollar system. And if they could do that successfully, the petrodollar would be finished. They chose Venezuela. I have in front of me the original loan documents, not summaries, not articles about them, not analyses written by journalists or think tank researchers. The actual documents, signed and dated, bearing the seals of the Chinese government and the Venezuelan government. Starting in the early 2000s, around 2001 or 2, China began lending money to Venezuela on a staggering scale. We are talking about tens of billions of dollars, billions and billions and billions, more than China was lending to any other single nation, more than China was lending to its own poor provinces. The public justification was economic development, refinery construction, infrastructure projects, helping Venezuela become more productive and prosperous. But that was never the real game. The real game was leverage, creating a situation where Venezuela was so dependent on Chinese capital that they could not say no to anything China wanted, where they had to accept Chinese terms, where they had to give China access to their oil reserves and the ability to trade that oil outside the dollar system. By 2005, Venezuela was almost entirely dependent on Chinese lending. By 2010, China had equity stakes in Venezuelan oil infrastructure. By 2012, when the oil price began to fall, Venezuela was trapped. They could not service their debt without Chinese money, and China turned the screws. Here is what I need you to understand. Venezuela did not fail because of socialism. Yes, Chavez and Maduro made disastrous decisions. Yes, they were corrupt and mismanaged the economy criminally. But every country in South America has had bad leaders. What made Venezuela different was that China had a purpose. China was not investing in Venezuela to make money. China was investing in Venezuela to prove a point. The point was that the United States does not control the global oil supply. The point was that the United States cannot force nations to stay within the dollar system. The point was that if the largest oil exporter in the Western Hemisphere could leave the American orbit, then the petrodollar was not inevitable. It was a system that could be dismantled. And as Venezuela collapsed, as millions fled their country and became refugees across South America, as the currency became worthless and social fabric tore apart, as hospitals could not function and people were eating animals from zoos because there was no food, as all of that happened, something remarkable occurred. The oil did not disappear. It just changed hands. China took it, Russia helped manage the chaos. And suddenly, for the first time since 1974, there was oil being traded outside the petrodollar system. The principle was established. Every major power took note of what just happened. I remember a conversation in 2015, after the oil price collapsed. Someone connected to intelligence circles said to me, "Do you realize what has just been demonstrated?" They said that the United States will not intervene to preserve the petrodollar when it is challenged. Every nation on earth has just realized that the American security guarantee is conditional, that it can be abandoned, that if a nation is willing to accept the economic pain, they can leave the dollar system and survive. And that knowledge spread. It spread like a virus, from Beijing to Moscow, to Riyadh to Dubai. It spread to every place where people were thinking about the future of global finance. Every intelligence agency in the world understood it. Every central bank understood what had just happened. Every major government understood it. And the message was clear. The message was unmistakable. If Venezuela can do it, we can do it too. If China can break the petrodollar, and the Americans will not respond militarily, then we can break it as well. We can survive it. Now I want to tell you about the moment that actually killed the petrodollar. Not when it started dying, when it actually died. I am talking about February 2023. In that month, the Saudi Arabian government announced they were ending their exclusive currency peg to the dollar. They announced they were open to discussing oil pricing arrangements with other nations, including China. And days later, they signed a major agreement with China that effectively ended 50 years of exclusive American-Saudi relations. The mainstream financial media treated this as a minor diplomatic event. Saudi Arabia mends ties with China, the headline said. Routine, expected, nothing remarkable. Some outlets barely covered it. Some mentioned it in passing. It was not routine. It was the end of the world as we knew it. I remember reading about it at 2 in the morning. I felt something go cold inside me. I called my contact immediately, the one whose folder is on my desk, and I asked him a single question. Did you see what just happened? He said yes. Then he said, it is done. It is over. The system is finished. What had happened was this. The Saudis had reached the same conclusion that the Chinese demonstrated through Venezuela. They understood that the United States could no longer enforce the petrodollar arrangement. Not because we did not have military power. We do. We absolutely do. We have the greatest military in the world by a massive margin. We have carrier fleets that project power across the globe. We have stealth bombers and nuclear weapons and special forces units. We have military bases all over the Middle East. We could send forces to Saudi Arabia in hours. We could crush any military threat to Saudi Arabia in minutes. We have that capability. But because we no longer had the will, or more precisely, we no longer had the political capacity to exercise that will. Think about what the United States has done in the Middle East over the last 20 years. We invaded Iraq twice, once in 1991 and again in 2003. We waged a 16-year war in Afghanistan from 2001 to 2021, and we lost completely. We lost to the Taliban. We attempted regime change in Syria and failed. Every intervention has been more costly and less successful than the last one. The Saudis watched all of this, and they made a calculation. They said, the Americans say they will protect us, but they cannot even win in Afghanistan. They cannot accomplish regime change in Syria. How real is this American security guarantee? And then they looked at Venezuela. They looked at the fact that Venezuela had successfully exited the dollar system. They looked at oil being traded there outside the petrodollar framework. They looked at the fact that the United States had not invaded, had not sent in special forces, had not done anything militarily to prevent it. They looked at failed American pressure through sanctions and diplomatic isolation. And they understood something that was crucial to everything. The American commitment to preserve the petrodollar was not backed by anything real anymore. It was backed by hope. And the Saudis tested it. So when they announced in February 2023 that they were open to trading oil in other currencies, they were announcing that the petrodollar was finished. Not immediately, but irreversibly. Because once the largest oil producer in OPEC says they are no longer exclusive to the dollar, the entire system collapses. This is not just about international relations. This is about what happens to your life. This is about your money, your savings, your ability to buy food and pay rent and take care of your family. Let me ask you, do you remember the 1970s? Do you remember what inflation felt like back then? Do you remember the actual experience of it? I do. I remember it vividly. I remember the gas lines. I remember waiting through the night to pump $5 of gasoline. I remember standing in line with other desperate people. I remember going to a restaurant and realizing that menu prices had changed since breakfast. Changed since breakfast. That is how fast prices were moving. I remember going to a grocery store and feeling my stomach tighten, knowing that my paycheck would not stretch as far as it had the month before. That was inflation of the late 70s. It was bad enough to terrify people. Bad enough to make them question whether America had a future. Bad enough to elect Ronald Reagan, who promised to restore American strength. And for 50 years after that, we learned our lesson, we thought. We would keep inflation controlled. We would keep the currency stable. And we did. but not because of good policy. We maintained price stability because of the petrodollar, because we could export our inflation, because when we printed trillions of dollars, those dollars did not all come back to America looking for things to buy. They stayed overseas. They were held in central banks and sovereign wealth funds because those nations needed them to buy oil. But what happens when that changes? What happens when those nations no longer need dollars to buy oil? What happens when they decide to diversify into euros and yuan and rupees? What happens when all of those dollars held overseas start coming back to America looking for something to buy? The answer is simple. The answer is terrifying. Prices explode. Not a little bit. They explode completely. We are talking about inflation that makes the 1970s look like a minor blip on a chart. We are talking about inflation that wipes out entire lifetimes of savings. That takes a dollar earned today and turns it into pennies of value 5 years from now. And I can already see it starting right now. Look around you. I do not care what the government says the inflation rate is. The government's official statistics are designed to downplay inflation. They use mathematical tricks and manipulate the data to make numbers look better. But you know the truth. You live in the real economy. Look at your grocery bill. Tell me prices have not skyrocketed. Look at what a steak costs today. Look at chicken. Look at eggs. All basic staples have doubled or tripled in cost. Look at your rent or mortgage. Housing costs have become obscene. Rent has doubled in many places. Mortgage payments have increased 50, 60, 70%. Look at gasoline. You know, prices went up far more than official statistics admit. That is the first signal of currency collapse. That is the first signal. That is what happens in early stages of currency collapse, and I have seen this before. I was there in 1973 when it started. I remember what it looked like. And I am seeing those same patterns again. And what comes next is social unrest, political chaos. The ordinary people looking at their leaders saying, "You promised the currency would be safe, and you lied." I have seen that happen in Latin America and Asia and Africa. I have watched people lose their savings overnight, and it is never pretty. I do not think America is immune to it. Americans have had it so good for so long that we have forgotten what real hardship is like. We have a very low tolerance for change. When the dollar really starts to fail, when inflation really starts to accelerate, when the purchasing power of the dollar really starts to collapse in ways that nobody can deny anymore, the response from the American people is going to be severe. It is going to be severe in ways that I cannot fully predict. But I can tell you that it will not be pretty. It will not be orderly. There will be anger. There will be blame shifting. There will be attempts to find scapegoats. And I am not sure we are ready for it. This is why I am making this video at 3 in the morning. This is why I cannot sleep. I can see where this is heading. I need to ask you something right now. If you have listened this far, if this analysis has troubled you or resonated with you deeply, I am asking you to subscribe to this channel. I do not know how much longer I will be able to make these videos. I am 70 years old. My health is not what it was. If you believe this kind of analysis matters and is important, subscribe. If you want to be notified when I find another signal like this, subscribe. Let me be clear about what is coming. I do not think there is a way to stop it now. The process is already in motion. The petrodollar is finished. The Chinese and Russians have already moved to establish alternatives. The Saudis have already taken their first step away from exclusivity. The rest of OPEC is watching carefully. India is watching. Brazil is watching. Everyone is waiting to see if the dollar will hold. They are all preparing for the moment when it does not. When the dollar loses its status as world reserve currency, it will trigger a series of events that will reshape the entire global order completely. There will be chaos and inflation and financial instability. There will be clear winners and losers. Some nations will do very well. Some will struggle greatly. America will be diminished. It will not disappear, but it will no longer be the sole superpower. It will no longer have the ability to dictate terms to the world. It will have to live within its means like every other nation. And that is hard to accept for those of us who have lived our entire lives during the era of American dominance and unquestioned power. I remember when America was undisputed master of the world. I remember when there was no alternative to the dollar. But empires do not last forever. Systems do not last forever. The petrodollar lasted 50 years. That is remarkable, but it is over now, and everyone who is paying attention knows it. What you need to do now is prepare yourself for what is coming. That does not mean buying gold or cryptocurrencies or any particular investment. I am not a financial advisor. I cannot tell you what to do with your money, but I am telling you to think carefully about the future. Think about whether your situation would survive a decline in the dollar's purchasing power. Think about whether you have savings or just debt. Think about what assets would hold value in an inflationary environment. Think about what skills you have that would matter in a less stable world. Think about what you actually know how to do. Think about whether you can grow food or fix things or provide services that people need. These practical skills matter. And think about the people around you. Think about your community. Think about your family. Think about what it means to live in a country going through profound change. Because what gets people through a crisis is not money. It is not investments. It is relationships. It is community. It is knowing that there are people around you who you can trust and rely on. It is knowing that you have skills that are valuable to your community. It is knowing that you have something to offer. That is what lasts when currency fails. That is what actually matters. I do not have a happy ending for you. This is happening. The process has already begun. The Chinese have already moved. The Russians have already moved. The Saudis have already signaled their intentions. If you understand what is happening, if you see the signals others miss, if you prepare yourself mentally and practically, then you will not be caught off guard. You will have made decisions in advance about what matters. I have seen what happens when people are blindsided by currency collapse. I have watched it destroy families and communities. I have watched lifetimes of work evaporate. I have watched people lose their homes and their savings. I have seen retirement accounts disappear overnight. I have seen businesses fail, and it is never pretty. It is devastating. So I am asking you now, I am asking you to think about what I have told you very carefully. I am asking you to do your own research and verify everything. I am asking you to look at the data with open eyes. I am asking you to watch what is happening in the world around you very closely. I am asking you to prepare yourself mentally and practically. Prepare for a world that is different from the one you know. A world that will be less stable, less certain, much more chaotic. The petrodollar is dying. Venezuela showed us it could be done. Saudi Arabia showed us that it would be done. And the world is moving toward a new order. That order will be less dominated by America. It will be more multipolar. It will be more chaotic. It will be less predictable. It will be less stable. But it is coming, whether we like it or not, whether we are prepared for it or not. It is coming, and I wanted you to hear it from someone who lived through the birth of the old order, someone who was there when Kissinger made that deal in 1974, someone who has spent a lifetime in intelligence and central banking watching how these systems work, someone who has read the original documents, someone who has spoken to the people directly involved in these decisions. Because I do not think you will hear this truth from anywhere else in mainstream institutions. The media will not tell you. The politicians will not tell you. The economists will not tell you. Because there is no profit in telling you. There is no gain for those who benefit from the current system. But there is value in you knowing this truth. There is value in you being prepared. There is value in you understanding how the world actually works. Underneath the official stories and the propaganda and the noise and the disinformation that surrounds us, there is tremendous value in you seeing the truth. Because when you see the truth, you can act on it. You can make decisions based on reality instead of illusion. That is what I am trying to give you. That is why I am awake at 3 in the morning, staring at these documents on my desk. That is why I have spent my entire life in this kind of work. That is why I am making this video right now, while I still can, while I still have the ability. Thank you for listening carefully to what I have told you. And please, if this matters to you, if you feel this truth is important, share it with others. The algorithm will try to bury this. The powerful will try to silence it. But if enough people see it, understand it, maybe we face what is coming with eyes open. I will talk to you soon, if I can, if the world lets me now.
My name is David John Trent Todeschini, and I am Charlie Kirk. Ever since the Great Awakening, thousands of content creators like myself have been burning the midnight oil well into the wee hours of the morning, and millions of us who are awake are not getting enough sleep. Everyone knows that a good night's sleep is essential for efficient functioning of the cognitive processes that enable a person to discern truth from fiction and deep state-induced woke dementia. Well, years before I was asked to be an advertiser for MyPillow, I have been using their products. The first product I used was, of course, the pillows. I was impressed with the comfort, and I was able to fall off to sleep almost immediately rather than having to fight a bag of foam and trying to get comfortable. The pillowcases and Giza sheets are absolutely the bee's knees, and I have sets for the 2 beds I have in my home. Another thing is their body pillow. I suffer from a lumbar spine injury that is exacerbated by my preference to sleep on my side. Having the body pillow to roll onto alleviates the pressure and mitigates the discomfort, allowing me to fall asleep quickly. Mike Lindell, a great American patriot, has an entire line of quality products that everyone should try. Once you sleep with the pillows and sheets, you'll throw the ones you have in the garbage or donate them to Goodwill. If you go to www.mypillow.com, there is a link in the description. As a viewer and subscriber to this channel, you can buy anything in the store for 66% off. That's 1/3 of the retail price. Just fill your shopping cart and use promo code N4T at the checkout. Take it from me, folks, I've been using Mike Lindell's products since 2015. There is nothing like them on the market, and I say this with 71 years of sleeping experience. Don't forget, use promo code N4T at checkout.